My name is Julia Oliver. My maiden name is Heller. I served in the Women's Army Corps Band from December 1958 to December 1963.
I'm Marilyn Ferraris. I served in the Army in 1954 to 1956.
My name is Karen Severson. I joined the Army in January of '73 and retired in November of '93.
Mary E. Clark. I enlisted in the Army in 1945, and I retired in 1981.
My name is Jan Larson, and my years of service were 1954 and 1955. When I left, my parents were outside the train station. I was the last one to go, and I think my mom was tickled to death, and she's waving goodbye. And my father's crying.
My father didn't like the idea too well. My mother was just kind of neutral about it. She was excited for me because I was going to fly in an airplane.
My mother was always of the opinion that if it was what we wanted, then she was all for it. My dad was dead set against it, and he waited until the night before I was supposed to enlist to sign the papers because he said he knew I'd hate him the rest of his life if I didn't.
I think that my parents just accepted it as just another decision. And, you know, the fact I was going into the military was not would have been to them not much different than, you know, me announcing I was going back to college. In fact, I think that probably would have been more of a surprise to them.
I was taking my oath of enlistment in Cleveland at the recruiting station, and the phone rang. Well, several of us had our right hand raised, taking our oath. Somebody answers it. I finish the oath, and they say, "Private Toth, your mother's on the phone." Go to the phone, and my mother's going, "Please come home. Please don't do this. Come home. Everything's going to be fine. We'll put you through school." It's like, "Too late, Mom. They've got me."
I wanted to get out of the small town in which I grew up, and I wanted to see some of the world and find out a few things.
I had thought about going into industrial chemistry, and I don't know why I decided to join the Army, but it was different, and I wouldn't be under my parents' supervision. I want to be, you know, on my own. I think that's the dream of everyone they get out of high school. I want to be on my own, and I thought this was one way to do it.
In 1954, I'm thinking, what is a female flautist going to do for the rest of her life? You know, she's going to have to be really, really, really good to get a job playing flute, or she's going to teach school.
Well, I always wanted to be in a band, and we couldn't get into a band because it was all male. And one day I was reading a brochure, and it said there was a Women's Army Corps band. I couldn't sleep. I was up all night. Next morning, I was down to the recruiter, and I said, I want to join the band.
So that morning, I stayed on the city bus. Rather than getting off, going to high school, I went to the Navy recruiter. So I was going to join a Navy band. And they told me that the only band that a woman could get into in 1971 was the Women's Army Corps Band.
I was going for the Air Force. I passed all the qualifications to get in the Air Force. And he said, "Now, what would you like to do, young lady?" And I said, "I want to play in the band." He said, "Oh, no." He said, "Women can't play in the band." And I said, "Well, why not?" He said, "Well, for the obvious reasons, you're a woman." I said, "Oh." I said, "Well, how about the Navy?" He said, "Oh, no, you don't understand." He said, "You can't play in any band unless it's the Women's Army Corps band. All other bands are closed to females." And back in the 70s, you pretty much accepted that answer.
I really think what pushed me off my indecision came from somebody saying to me one day, if I was a real guitar player, I'd be one of the top ones in the state. And what they meant was, were I a man playing an equal amount of guitar? And I thought, if I go into this band, at least somebody won't say to me, for a girl, you play pretty good guitar.
I auditioned when I was in basic training, and the happiest day of my life was when I found out that that was my assignment to that WAC band, because I had heard them when I was in basic, and I thought, no, I'll never get into that band. They're too good, because they were always fantastic, and that's why I was so happy.
6 months in the WAC band and you felt like a professional musician. I mean, this is a professional thing that I'm doing.
I don't know how many people felt like I did that they weren't virtuosos, and I think most people felt like they weren't a virtuoso or, you know, the top of the line of anything. But so many of the people were so good and didn't realize it and downplayed their talent.
A lot of us thought that we really couldn't do the job, like we really had to keep plugging away all the time. We were no good, but we were really better than what we thought. Of course, we knew that after we get our standing ovations.
It was so neat to watch an audience turn from ha ha to wow.
My 15 minutes of fame was seconds at a time. Oh God, I played that one note right, that's cool. I can do this. And it was always that little struggle inside you. It's like every time you walk into the rehearsal hall, you're naked. And as you play and as you get better, you get more clothes on and feel more secure in your performance.
You can always tell when you're doing a good job. You can just feel the whole unit come together, and you know at the end of the parade whether you've done a good job as a whole. It's just something that you feel.
It was amazing what these women came together and did. I mean, we could hold our own against anyone. We really could. We were musicians. I mean, we were women, but we were musicians, and we were good musicians.
I didn't realize at the time that the Women's Army Corps Band was a group of hand-picked musicians. It wasn't just another post band that you got assigned to. This was a very select, elite group of musicians. And you know, I've played all my life. That still stands as one of the truly great wind ensembles I've played with.
Patriotic music is a big part of my life. I have bunches of patriotic CDs and stuff, and I'll listen to these bands, Navy, Coast Guard, Marines, Army, and I'll go, boy, you know, we played that, we did that, we sounded just like that. Actually, I think our trumpet section was better.
It was hard being on the road, always looking quite presentable, always having to wear lipstick. If you didn't wear lipstick, you got chewed out. Always trying to look nice and, you know, act appropriately and everything. And because, well, we were public relations, representing the United States Army.
I think band units tend to have higher standards because you're visible. The band people are going to look good in their Class A uniform. You have standards that you just do that.
Because we're in the public eye, sometimes we're the only thing that the public sees of the Army. If we are not the recruiting poster picture of what the military should be all about, then we're not telling the right story. You know, a lot of stress is put on, I think, the appearance of the bandsman, is the diplomat that we are for the Army.
We represented ourselves, number one, as the band. Then we represented the Women's Army Corps and the Department of Army. So when we went out on tours, we were expected to have the highest decorum.
We still were military, and we had to abide by the rules and the regulations, you know. And they never let us forget for 1 minute that we're in the United States Army. And even worse was that we were in the Women's Army Corps Band, and there was only one of a kind, so we always had to be on our best behavior.
You never know. You're out in the public, you're interacting, you never know when media is going to come up and put that microphone in your face and ask you a question. You have to be on your best behavior with things.
It was more difficult than what you think. A lot of people think, well, we just play our instrument and that's it, we don't do anything else. But we really worked hard, and a lot of times we had to give up our meals sometimes because we have to be at a certain place at a certain time, and then we had to have our uniforms had to be just spotless, and we're always working on our uniforms. We had all these taupe dresses, we had to iron them all the time on tour. And then we'd ride in these buses that with open windows, and our hair would get blown, and we'd step out and we'd look terrible.
We grew into, I think, decent, good women as a result of this experience.